Something just happened in the Middle East that has every military expert on the planet sitting up straight in their chair. The United States of America did not send one aircraft carrier. Not two, not three, not even four. Five of the most powerful war machines ever built by human hands are now sitting in waters close to Iran, and the world held its breath, waiting to see what Tehran would do next. Well, Iran just answered, and nobody was ready for what came out of their mouth. Before getting into that answer, it is important that every single person watching this understands just how big this moment is. An aircraft carrier is not just a ship. It is a floating city of war. It carries fighter jets, missiles, thousands of trained soldiers, and enough firepower to level a country. That is a warning written in steel across the ocean. The last time something close to this happened was during the Gulf War decades ago. And that war changed the entire shape of the Middle East. So what does Iran do when 5 of these giants show up at its doorstep? That is exactly what this report is going to break down step by step in plain, simple words so that everyone understands what is really going on behind the headlines. Stay right here. Do not go anywhere. And if this is the first time landing on this channel, hit that subscribe button right now, because this is the kind of reporting that tells the full story, not just the parts the big stations want people to hear. Part 2 is coming, and that is where it gets truly unbelievable. Now let us go back a little, because context is everything. For months, tensions between the United States and Iran have been climbing like a thermometer left in the desert sun. Strikes in Yemen, attacks on American bases, proxy fights playing out across Iraq, Syria, and beyond. The Middle East has been sitting on a powder keg, and everyone could smell the smoke. Then Washington made its move. The USS Harry S. Truman was already in the region. Then a second carrier group arrived. Then a third. Military analysts started whispering. Then a fourth carrier group entered the picture. And those whispers became loud conversations in every defense ministry around the world. But when the fifth carrier group was confirmed in those waters, the whispers stopped completely, because at that point, people were not whispering anymore. They were asking one very serious question. Is America preparing for war with Iran? That question traveled fast. It reached Tehran. It reached Moscow. It reached Beijing. Every major power on this planet turned its eyes to the Persian Gulf and waited. Iran's government did not stay quiet for long. Senior Iranian military commanders stepped in front of cameras, government officials made calls, state television ran special broadcasts, and what came out of Iran in response to those 5 carriers was something that split military analysts straight down the middle. Half of them said Iran was being incredibly bold. The other half said Iran was doing something far more calculated and dangerous than simple boldness. And here's the part that makes this story unlike anything seen in years. Iran did not just respond with words. There were movements. There were deployments. There were signals sent through back channels that only the most connected intelligence services even picked up on. This story has layers, and every single layer matters. Stay locked in. Subscribe if still on the outside of this channel looking in, because part 3 is where the real details start to surface. So here is what Iran actually did. And pay very close attention to this part. First, Iran's military did not panic. That is the first thing every analyst noticed. There was no scrambling, no frantic press conference, no emotional outburst from the supreme leader's office. Instead, Iran moved with the kind of calm that only comes from one of 2 things: Either a country is completely confident in its position, or it has already made a decision that nobody outside those walls knows about yet. Iran's Revolutionary Guard, the most powerful military force inside the country, went to its highest state of readiness. Missile batteries along the coastline were repositioned. Radar systems were activated across multiple sites. Naval vessels moved out of their usual positions and spread across the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. Now stop right there. The Strait of Hormuz. That name matters more than almost any other name in this story. About 20% of all the oil that moves around this entire planet passes through that narrow strip of water. It is less than 40 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. If Iran closes that strait, even for a single week, the price of oil does not just go up, it explodes. Economies shake, governments fall, ordinary people paying at the fuel pump feel it within days. Iran knows this. America knows this. Every nation that runs on oil knows this. And Iran positioned its forces right there, right at that choke point, sending a message that did not need a single word attached to it. But then Iran's leadership did something that shocked even the analysts who had been watching Tehran for 20 and 30 years. They made a public statement, and that statement contained a sentence that stopped rooms full of intelligence officers cold. What was that sentence? That is coming in part 4. And it is the part that changes everything about how this standoff should be understood. Do not move. And if this reporting is hitting different from what is seen everywhere else, that subscribe button is right there. Hit it. Because this channel does not cut corners on the truth. The statement came from a senior Iranian military commander, and the words were measured, deliberate, chosen very carefully. He said that Iran does not fear aircraft carriers. He said that in modern warfare, a large ship is not a sign of strength. It is a target. Let that sink in for a moment. Iran stood in front of the entire world, looked directly at 5 of the most powerful naval vessels ever constructed, and called them targets. Now, some people heard that and laughed. Some called it empty talk from a cornered government trying to look strong. But the analysts who have spent their careers studying Iranian military strategy did not laugh, because they knew something that the casual news viewer did not know. Iran has spent the last 15 years building one of the most advanced anti-ship missile programs on the planet. Not because they wanted to compete with America, ship for ship. That was never the strategy. Iran's strategy was always different. Iran looked at American naval power and asked one question: how do we make those ships vulnerable? And they went to work answering that question with everything they had. The missiles they have developed are not old technology. They are fast. Some of them fly so low over the water that radar systems struggle to detect them until they are dangerously close. Some of them are designed to come in groups, overwhelming a ship's defense systems by arriving from multiple directions at the same time. Military experts call this saturation attack. And it is one of the most serious threats any naval force can face. Iran tested several of these missile systems in military exercises that took place just weeks before those 5 carriers arrived in the region. The timing of those exercises was not an accident. Iran was not just responding to the carriers with words. Iran was reminding Washington of exactly what it had been building, quietly, patiently, for over a decade. But here's what makes this entire situation even more complex. Because there is another player in this story that has barely been mentioned yet. A player whose involvement changes the entire calculation for everyone sitting at this table. Part 5 brings it all together. The full picture. What happens next? And what the world should genuinely be watching for in the coming days and weeks. Stay right there. This is the most important part of the whole story. The player that changes everything in this story is China. While America was moving carriers into position and Iran was repositioning its missiles, Beijing was watching every single move with extraordinary attention. China has its own tensions with the United States, its own disputes, its own reasons to study how Washington responds when a confrontation reaches this level of intensity. And China has a relationship with Iran that goes far deeper than most people realize. A 25-year cooperation agreement, oil deals worth hundreds of billions of dollars, military exchanges, intelligence sharing. When Iran feels pressure, Beijing feels it too. Not in the same way, but enough to make China's next moves matter enormously to how this whole situation resolves. Russia is watching too. Moscow and Tehran have been drawing closer together through shared weapons programs and shared enemies. A serious escalation between America and Iran does not stay contained between just those two countries. It pulls in other forces, other interests, other weapons. That is the world that those 5 aircraft carriers sailed into. Now here's the honest truth about where things stand right now. Nobody wants a full-scale war. Not America, not Iran, not China, not Russia. Full-scale war in the Persian Gulf would damage every economy on Earth, including the economies of the countries fighting. The oil markets alone would create a crisis that would hurt ordinary families in countries that have nothing to do with any of this conflict. But not wanting war and successfully avoiding war are two very different things. History is full of moments where nobody wanted a war and a war happened anyway. Because of a miscalculation, because of a provoked response, because one side pushed just a little too far and the other side felt it had no choice but to answer. That is the razor's edge. The world is walking right now. Iran has made its position clear. America has made its power visible. And somewhere between those two positions, diplomats, generals, and intelligence officers are working around the clock trying to find a path that does not end in catastrophe. Whether they find that path is the question that will define the next chapter of this story. This channel will be here when that next chapter breaks, covering it the same way this story was covered today. No noise, no panic, just the full picture in plain, simple words that everyone can understand. If this reporting made the world make a little more sense today, then do one thing. Subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to understand what is really happening out there. Because the world is moving fast right now, and the people who stay informed are the people who are never caught off guard. This has been a full breakdown of one of the most serious military standoffs the world has seen in years. Stay safe, stay informed, and stay right here on this channel, because the next story is already coming.